Imagine opening a container of food. Not after a few weeks. Not after a few months. But more than 25 years later. You remove the lid. The food is still safe to use. Still nutritious. Still capable of helping feed your family when it matters most. It almost sounds impossible. After all, we're used to checking expiration dates on everything we buy. Milk lasts days. Bread lasts about a week. Fresh meat only a few days. Even frozen foods eventually lose quality. But some emergency foods are completely different. When they're packaged and stored correctly, they can remain usable for decades. That's why emergency planners, homesteaders, and experienced preppers keep these foods in their long-term storage. They're not expecting disaster every day. They're preparing for the unexpected. Whether it's a natural disaster, a prolonged power outage, economic uncertainty, or simply rising grocery prices. Having foods that can last over 25 years provides something that's difficult to put a price on. Peace of mind. Today's countdown features 15 emergency foods known for their exceptional shelf life when stored under proper conditions. Some may already be in your pantry. Others might surprise you. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll discover one of the longest-lasting emergency foods available today. Before we begin, if you enjoy preparedness tips, long-term food storage advice, and practical ways to build a smarter pantry, subscribe to Prepper Pulse and turn on notifications. Now, let's begin with number 15. Number 15. White rice. Starting our countdown at number 15. White rice. It may look like one of the simplest foods in your pantry, but don't let its appearance fool you. When properly packaged, white rice can become one of the most dependable emergency foods you'll ever own. The key phrase is properly packaged. A bag of rice left in its original store packaging won't last for decades. Over time, moisture, oxygen, insects, and temperature changes slowly reduce its quality. But when white rice is sealed inside mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and stored in food-grade buckets in a cool, dry place, its shelf life can extend well beyond 25 years. That's why white rice is one of the first foods recommended by emergency preparedness experts. Another reason is its versatility. Rice pairs well with canned meat, beans, freeze-dried vegetables, soup, or simple seasonings. It can be served as a side dish or become the foundation of an entire meal. A relatively small amount can feed several people, making it one of the most cost-effective foods for long-term storage. White rice is also compact. You can store a large number of servings in a surprisingly small space. For families building an emergency pantry, that's a major advantage. It's important to remember that we're talking about white rice, not brown rice. Brown rice contains natural oils in its outer layer. Those oils eventually become rancid, giving brown rice a much shorter shelf life. White rice, with that outer layer removed, is far better suited for decades of storage. Storage conditions matter just as much as the food itself. Heat is the enemy of long-term storage. The cooler and drier the environment, the longer white rice is likely to maintain its quality. Keeping it away from direct sunlight and humidity helps preserve both taste and texture. One common mistake is waiting until an emergency to buy large amounts. Experienced preppers usually build their supply gradually. Adding a little at a time spreads out the cost and creates a well-organized pantry that can be rotated when needed. White rice earns the number 15 spot because it's affordable, easy to store, incredibly versatile, and capable of lasting more than 25 years when packaged and stored correctly. But the next food lasts just as long while offering something white rice doesn't. A powerful source of protein that has supported civilizations for thousands of years. Number 14. Dried beans. At number 14. Dried beans. They may not look impressive sitting in a simple bag. But don't underestimate them. For centuries, dried beans have been one of the world's most dependable survival foods. They're inexpensive, easy to store, and packed with nutrients that become incredibly valuable during an emergency. Black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, navy beans, lentils, and chickpeas all have one thing in common. When stored properly, they can remain usable for well over 25 years. Like white rice, The secret is proper storage. Leaving beans in their original plastic bags isn't enough for long-term preservation. The best results come from sealing them in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and placing them inside food-grade buckets or other airtight containers. Stored in a cool, dry location, they can remain an excellent emergency food for decades. One reason preppers value dried beans so highly is their nutrition. They're rich in protein, high in fiber, and contain important vitamins and minerals that help create balanced meals. Combined with rice, they provide a more complete source of protein, making them one of the most practical emergency food combinations ever created. Another advantage is variety. Different beans can be used in soups, stews, chili, rice dishes, salads, or simply seasoned and served on their own. That variety becomes important during long emergencies when eating the same meal every day can become exhausting. Of course, dried beans do require cooking. That means you'll need water and a reliable heat source. Many experienced preppers store extra water and alternative cooking methods alongside their food supplies for exactly this reason. It's also worth knowing that older beans may take longer to soften during cooking. That doesn't necessarily mean they've gone bad. They may simply need additional soaking and a little more cooking time. For many families, dried beans offer one of the best values in long-term food storage. They're affordable enough to buy in bulk, compact enough to store efficiently, and nutritious enough to become a pantry staple for years to come. Dried beans earn the number 14 spot because they combine exceptional shelf life, excellent nutrition, and remarkable versatility, making them one of the smartest emergency foods you can store for the long haul. But the next food has an even longer history. In fact, it has been used for thousands of years, never truly spoils, and can still be enjoyed decades after it's stored under the right conditions. Number 13. Honey. At number 13. Honey. It may be the only food in your pantry that's famous for having no true expiration date. Archaeologists have even discovered sealed jars of honey in ancient tombs that were still preserved after thousands of years. That doesn't mean every jar of honey will last forever under any condition. But when pure honey is stored in a tightly sealed container and kept in a cool, dry place, it can remain usable for decades. One reason honey lasts so long is its natural composition. It contains very little moisture, making it difficult for bacteria and other microorganisms to grow. That's why honey has earned its reputation as one of the longest-lasting foods ever produced. Many people become concerned when they see honey crystallize. The once clear liquid turns thick and grainy. Fortunately, crystallization doesn't mean the honey has spoiled. It's a completely natural process. Simply placing the container in warm water and stirring gently will often return it to its liquid form. Honey offers more than just sweetness. It can improve the flavor of oatmeal, tea, homemade bread, pancakes, and many emergency meals that might otherwise taste bland. When you're eating from long-term food storage, even a small amount of sweetness can make meals much more enjoyable. Another advantage is that honey requires no refrigeration after opening. As long as the container stays sealed and moisture doesn't get inside, it continues to store exceptionally well. That's one reason emergency planners often include several jars in their food reserves. When purchasing honey for long-term storage, many people prefer pure honey rather than products blended with syrups or other sweeteners. Pure honey generally offers the best long-term stability. It's also a good idea to store it in glass jars or durable food-safe containers where it will remain protected from moisture and contamination. Honey earns the number 13 spot because it's one of the few natural foods that can remain usable for decades, providing both long shelf life and a welcome source of sweetness when fresh foods may no longer be available. But the next food isn't sweet at all. It's one of the most important baking ingredients in the world, and when stored correctly, it can stay ready for use long after most people would expect. Number 12. Hard wheat berries. At number 12. Hard wheat berries. Most people don't think about storing whole wheat. They think about flour, bread, pasta, or breakfast cereal. But long-term food storage experts often skip the flour and store the grain itself. Why? Because whole wheat berries last much longer. When wheat is ground into flour, its protective outer layer is broken. Natural oils become exposed to air. Over time, those oils slowly reduce the flour's quality and shelf life. Whole wheat berries are different. Their natural structure protects the grain, allowing it to remain stable for decades when stored correctly. Sealed in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and kept inside food-grade buckets in a cool, dry location, hard wheat berries can last well over 25 years. That's one reason they're considered one of the foundations of long-term emergency food storage. Another advantage is versatility. With a grain mill, wheat berries can be turned into fresh flour whenever you need it. That flour can be used for bread, biscuits, pancakes, pizza dough, pasta, and countless other foods. Even without grinding, wheat berries can be cooked whole and added to soups, salads, or hot cereal. They're rich in carbohydrates, fiber, and several important nutrients, making them a valuable source of long-lasting energy. Many preparedness-minded families also appreciate how efficiently they store. A few food-grade buckets can hold hundreds of meals while taking up surprisingly little space. Of course, there is one thing to remember. If you plan to store wheat berries for decades, it's worth having a manual grain mill. During a long power outage, an electric grinder may not be an option. A hand-operated mill ensures you can still turn your stored grain into usable flour whenever you need it. Hard wheat berries earn the number 12 spot because they combine exceptional shelf life, outstanding versatility, and reliable nutrition, making them one of the smartest investments for anyone building a long-term emergency pantry. But the next food proves that survival isn't only about grains. It's a simple pantry staple that adds flavor to almost every meal and can remain ready to use for decades without losing its value. Number 11. Salt. We're entering the top 11. And at number 11 is something that most people don't even think of as an emergency food. Salt. It doesn't provide calories. It isn't a complete meal. And no one sits down to eat it by itself. Yet without it, many long-term food storage plans would be incomplete. The first reason is simple. Salt has an incredibly long shelf life. Pure salt doesn't spoil. It doesn't support bacterial growth. And when it's kept dry and protected from moisture, it can remain usable indefinitely. That's why ancient civilizations valued it so highly. For thousands of years, salt was used to preserve food long before modern refrigeration existed. Today, it still serves many important purposes. It improves the flavor of stored foods. It can make simple meals far more enjoyable. And it's an essential ingredient for baking, cooking, and preserving certain foods. Imagine eating plain rice, plain beans, or plain pasta every day. They'll keep you alive. But adding just a small amount of salt can make those meals much easier to enjoy over an extended period. Salt is also one of the easiest pantry staples to store. It doesn't require special packaging like oxygen absorbers. Simply keeping it in airtight containers away from humidity is enough to protect it for many years. Many preparedness-minded families choose to store several types of salt. Table salt for everyday cooking, kosher salt for food preparation, and pickling or canning salt for preserving foods. Each has its own purpose, but all offer exceptional storage life. One thing to remember is moisture. If salt absorbs humidity, it may clump together into hard chunks. While that can make it harder to pour, it usually doesn't mean the salt has gone bad. Breaking it apart or grinding it often restores it to normal use. Salt earns the number 11 spot because it lasts virtually forever when stored properly, takes up very little space, and plays an essential role in cooking, food preservation, and making long-term emergency meals far more enjoyable. But the next food offers something completely different. It's lightweight, packed with nutrients, and despite looking delicate, it can remain shelf-stable for decades when sealed the right way. Number 10. Freeze-dried vegetables. We've reached the top 10, and at number 10 is one of the smartest additions to any long-term emergency pantry. Freeze-dried vegetables. At first glance, they don't look very impressive. They are lightweight, dry, and often much smaller than fresh vegetables. But that's because nearly all of the water has been removed. That process is what gives freeze-dried vegetables their incredible shelf life. Unlike canned vegetables, which are already hydrated, freeze-dried vegetables contain very little moisture. Without moisture, bacteria, and mold have a much harder time growing. When they're packaged in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers and stored in a cool, dry place, many freeze-dried vegetables can last well over 25 years. Another major advantage is nutrition. The freeze-drying process helps preserve much of the original flavor, color, and nutritional value. When water is added back, many vegetables regain a texture that's surprisingly close to fresh. Carrots, peas, corn, green beans, broccoli, spinach, bell peppers, and onions are just a few of the many options available. They can be added directly to soups, stews, rice dishes, pasta, or casseroles. Some can even be eaten as crunchy snacks right out of the package. Storage is another reason they're so popular. Because the water has been removed, freeze-dried vegetables weigh much less than canned foods. That makes them easier to transport and allows you to store hundreds of servings in a relatively small space. Of course, there is one important requirement. Most freeze-dried vegetables need water before they're used in recipes. That's why experienced preppers always store an adequate water supply alongside their emergency food. Without water, even the best long-term food storage plan becomes much less effective. Although freeze-dried foods usually cost more than canned or dehydrated foods, many families see them as a long-term investment. Their exceptional shelf life often means they can remain untouched for decades while still being ready whenever they're needed. Freeze-dried vegetables earn the number 10 spot because they combine excellent nutrition, lightweight storage, and a shelf life that can exceed 25 years, making them one of the most dependable emergency foods available. But the next food has been trusted by sailors, explorers, and emergency planners for generations. It's simple, filling, and capable of lasting for decades when stored the right way. Here's the next section in the shorter 10K word style. Number 9. Rolled oats. At number 9. Rolled oats. Most people think of them as a simple breakfast food. But experienced preppers know they're much more than that. Oats are affordable, easy to prepare, and incredibly versatile. When packaged correctly and stored in a cool, dry place, rolled oats can remain usable for decades, making them an excellent addition to a long-term emergency pantry. One of the biggest advantages of oats is how quickly they can be prepared. With just hot water, they become a warm, filling meal in minutes. If fuel is limited during an emergency, that shorter cooking time becomes a major benefit compared to foods that require extended boiling. Oats are also surprisingly flexible. They can be made into hot cereal, added to smoothies, mixed into homemade bread, used in cookies, combined with dried fruit, or ground into oat flour for baking. A single container can be used in dozens of different recipes. Nutritionally, oats provide complex carbohydrates that release energy gradually. They're also a good source of fiber, helping meals feel more satisfying. When combined with honey, powdered milk, or freeze-dried fruit, oats become a balanced breakfast that's both comforting and nutritious. Proper storage is essential. Oats kept in their original paper containers won't last for decades. For maximum shelf life, they're best sealed in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and protected inside airtight food-grade buckets. Keeping them away from heat, moisture, and sunlight helps preserve both flavor and quality. Another reason oats are popular among preparedness-minded families is cost. They provide hundreds of servings without requiring a large investment. That makes them an easy food to add gradually as you build your emergency pantry. Rolled oats earn the number 9 spot because they're affordable, nutritious, easy to prepare, and capable of lasting for decades when stored properly. But the next food offers something oats cannot. A rich source of protein and healthy fats that's ready whenever you need a quick, satisfying meal during an emergency. Number 8. Powdered milk. At number 8. Powdered milk. For many people, it's one of the most overlooked foods in long-term storage. Fresh milk is something we buy every week. We keep it in the refrigerator. And if the power goes out for long enough, it quickly becomes unusable. Powdered milk solves that problem. With the water removed, it becomes much lighter, takes up less space, and can last for decades when packaged and stored correctly. Just add clean water, stir well, and it's ready to use. That's why emergency planners have relied on it for years. Powdered milk isn't just for drinking. It can be used in oatmeal, pancakes, biscuits, mashed potatoes, soups, sauces, baked goods, and countless other recipes. If you're storing wheat, oats, or baking ingredients, powdered milk becomes even more valuable because it allows you to prepare many everyday foods that would otherwise require fresh dairy. Another advantage is nutrition. It provides protein, calcium, and other important nutrients that can be harder to obtain during a long emergency. For families with children, having a reliable source of dairy ingredients can make a significant difference. Of course, storage conditions are critical. Commercial packages may last several years, but long-term storage products that are sealed with oxygen absorbers and kept in a cool, dry location can remain usable for well over 25 years. Once opened, however, the shelf life becomes much shorter. That's why many experienced preppers choose smaller containers instead of one large package. Opening only what you need helps protect the rest of your supply. Powdered milk also stores remarkably well alongside other emergency staples. Combined with oats, rice, honey, or freeze-dried fruit, it can help create filling, nutritious meals using only shelf-stable ingredients. Powdered milk earns the number 8 spot because it replaces one of the most perishable foods in your kitchen with an option that can remain ready for decades when stored correctly. Number 7. Freeze-dried fruit. We're down to the final 7. And at number 7 is a food that proves emergency storage doesn't have to be boring. Freeze-dried fruit. When people build a long-term pantry, they usually focus on calories, protein, and shelf life. But they often forget about variety. After weeks of eating rice, beans, and other basic staples, having real fruit can make a huge difference. That's where freeze-dried fruit shines. Using a specialized freeze-drying process, nearly all the moisture is removed while much of the fruit's flavor, color, and nutrients are preserved. The result is a lightweight food that can remain shelf-stable for more than 25 years when stored in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers. Strawberries, blueberries, bananas, apples, peaches, raspberries, and mangoes are just a few of the many fruits available. Some can be eaten right out of the package as a crunchy snack. Others can be rehydrated with water and used in recipes almost like fresh fruit. Freeze-dried fruit is incredibly versatile. Mix it into oatmeal. Add it to cereal. Bake it into muffins. Blend it into smoothies. Or enjoy it on its own. During an emergency, those small comforts can make meals feel much more normal. Another advantage is weight. Because almost all the water has been removed, freeze-dried fruit is much lighter than canned fruit. That means you can store hundreds of servings without needing large amounts of space. Like other freeze-dried foods, proper storage is essential. Heat, moisture, and sunlight gradually reduce shelf life. Keeping the containers sealed and stored in a cool, dry location helps preserve quality for decades. Although freeze-dried fruit usually costs more than fresh fruit, many preparedness-minded families see it as an investment. They're not buying it for next week. They're buying it for years down the road when having nutritious fruit available could be incredibly valuable. Freeze-dried fruit earns the number 7 spot because it combines excellent shelf life, valuable nutrition, and a welcome change from basic emergency foods, making it one of the smartest additions to a long-term pantry. Number 6. Freeze-dried meat. We've reached the top 6. And at number 6 is one of the most valuable foods in any long-term emergency pantry. Freeze-dried meat. Grains and beans can provide energy. Fruits and vegetables add important nutrients. But protein is often the hardest part of a long-term food storage plan. That's why freeze-dried meat has become such a popular choice among experienced preppers. The freeze-drying process removes almost all of the moisture while preserving much of the meat's flavor and nutritional value. When sealed in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers and stored in a cool, dry place, many freeze-dried meats can remain shelf-stable for more than 25 years. That's an incredible shelf life for a food that starts out as fresh meat. Chicken, beef, turkey, sausage, and even cooked ground beef are commonly available in freeze-dried form. When it's time to use them, Simply add water and allow the meat to rehydrate. It can then be added to soups, stews, pasta, rice, casseroles, or countless other meals. In situations where water is limited, some freeze-dried meats can even be eaten dry as a snack, although most people prefer rehydrating them for the best texture. Another advantage is storage space. Since nearly all the water has been removed, freeze-dried meat weighs much less than canned meat while providing many servings in a compact container. That's especially important for families building a large emergency pantry. Of course, freeze-dried meat is usually more expensive than canned meat. But many preparedness experts consider it a worthwhile investment because of its exceptional shelf life and nutritional value. Instead of constantly replacing frozen meat every year, properly stored freeze-dried meat can remain ready for decades. Like all long-term foods, storage conditions matter. Keep containers sealed until needed. Protect them from moisture and excessive heat. And rotate any opened containers into your normal meal planning. Freeze-dried meat earns the number 6 spot because it delivers high-quality protein, outstanding versatility, and a shelf life that can exceed 25 years, making it one of the most important foods for serious long-term preparedness. Number 5. Pasta. We've reached the top 5. And at number 5 is one of the most familiar foods in almost every pantry. Pasta. It's affordable, easy to prepare, and loved by people of all ages. From spaghetti and macaroni to penne and rotini, pasta has become a staple in homes around the world. Most people buy it for everyday meals. But long-term food storage experts see it differently. When stored correctly, dry pasta can remain usable for decades. The key is keeping it away from its biggest enemies: moisture, oxygen, heat, and pests. Pasta left in its original cardboard box may last several years. But for true long-term storage, many preppers transfer it into mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and place those bags inside food-grade buckets or airtight containers. That extra effort can dramatically extend its shelf life. One reason pasta is so valuable is its versatility. It pairs well with canned meat, freeze-dried vegetables, powdered cheese, tomato sauce, or simple seasonings. Even a basic meal of pasta with a little oil and salt can provide filling, dependable energy during an emergency. Pasta is also easy to store. Its compact shape allows hundreds of servings to fit into a relatively small space. For families building an emergency pantry, that's an important advantage. Another benefit is familiarity. During stressful situations, eating foods your family already enjoys can provide a sense of normalcy. Children who might refuse unfamiliar emergency foods are often happy to eat a bowl of pasta. Of course, pasta does require boiling water. That's why experienced preppers always plan for cooking fuel and a reliable water supply alongside their food storage. A pantry full of food is only as useful as your ability to prepare it. Pasta earns the number 5 spot because it's inexpensive, widely available, highly versatile, and capable of lasting for decades when packaged and stored properly. Number 4. Sugar. We're down to the final 4. And at number 4 is a food that many people overlook when building an emergency pantry. Sugar. At first, it may not seem like a survival food. After all, no one plans to live on sugar alone. But its value goes far beyond adding sweetness to coffee or desserts. When stored properly, white granulated sugar has an extremely long shelf life. Unlike many other foods, it doesn't support bacterial growth when kept dry. As long as moisture stays out, sugar can remain usable for decades. One thing that surprises many people is that sugar may harden over time. Large, solid clumps can form inside the container. Fortunately, that doesn't mean it has spoiled. Breaking the sugar apart with a clean utensil usually restores it for normal use. Sugar becomes especially valuable during long emergencies because it improves the taste of stored foods. Simple oatmeal, plain bread, homemade biscuits, or powdered milk can all become much more enjoyable with just a small amount of sugar. That boost in flavor can make a real difference when you're relying on shelf-stable foods for an extended period. Sugar is also an important baking ingredient. If you're storing wheat berries, flour, powdered milk, or baking supplies, Sugar allows you to prepare many familiar recipes instead of eating the same basic meals every day. Another advantage is storage. Unlike many emergency foods, sugar doesn't require oxygen absorbers. In fact, oxygen absorbers can cause sugar to harden into a solid block. Instead, it's best stored in airtight containers that protect it from moisture, insects, and humidity. Many preparedness experts recommend storing several smaller containers instead of one large bucket. That way, once one container is opened, the rest remains sealed and protected. Sugar earns the number 4 spot because it lasts for decades, stores easily, and adds both flavor and flexibility to a long-term food supply. Number 3. Instant coffee. We've reached the final 3. And at number 3 is something many people would never think to include in an emergency food supply. Instant coffee. Technically, you can survive without it. But for millions of people, starting the day without coffee can make an already stressful situation feel even more difficult. That's one reason experienced preppers often set aside a supply for long-term storage. When kept dry and sealed from air and moisture, instant coffee can remain usable for decades. The flavor may slowly change over time, but properly stored coffee often remains safe to drink long after its printed best-by date. One of its biggest advantages is convenience. Unlike whole coffee beans or ground coffee, instant coffee doesn't require a coffee maker. It doesn't need filters, and it doesn't require complicated equipment. Just add hot water, stir, and it's ready in seconds. During an emergency, when electricity may not be available, that simplicity becomes incredibly valuable. Instant coffee also takes up very little space. A single sealed container can provide hundreds of cups while fitting easily into a pantry shelf or emergency storage bin. For families with coffee drinkers, that's a small investment that can provide a big morale boost. Long-term preparedness isn't only about calories. It's also about maintaining a sense of routine. Something as simple as enjoying a familiar morning cup of coffee can reduce stress and make difficult situations feel more manageable. Storage is straightforward. Keep instant coffee in its original sealed jar or transfer it to an airtight container if necessary. Store it in a cool, dry location away from heat and direct sunlight. Once opened, use it within a reasonable time to enjoy the best flavor. Many experienced preppers also keep extra sugar and powdered milk nearby, creating a complete coffee station using only shelf-stable ingredients. It may seem like a luxury, but during a prolonged emergency, small comforts often become surprisingly important. Instant coffee earns the number 3 spot because it stores exceptionally well, requires almost no preparation, and provides a familiar routine that many people appreciate during uncertain times. Number 2. Pure maple syrup. We've reached the runner-up. And at number 2 is a food that surprises many people. Pure maple syrup. Most people think of it as something you pour over pancakes. But when it's stored properly, pure maple syrup can become an excellent long-term pantry item. An unopened container kept in a cool, dark place can remain usable for many years. And when frozen, its shelf life can be extended even further without harming its quality. One of the biggest advantages of maple syrup is its versatility. It sweetens oatmeal, pancakes, biscuits, homemade bread, tea, coffee, and countless baked goods. During a long emergency, having a natural sweetener can make simple meals much more enjoyable. Maple syrup also contains naturally occurring minerals such as manganese and zinc. While it's still a sweetener and should be enjoyed in moderation, it offers more than just flavor. Storage is important. Always keep the container tightly sealed. Protect it from excessive heat and direct sunlight. After opening, refrigeration helps preserve its quality for much longer. For long-term emergency storage, many families choose smaller containers instead of one large bottle. That way, only one container is exposed to air at a time while the others remain sealed. Another reason preparedness-minded families store maple syrup is morale. During difficult times, familiar flavors can make ordinary meals feel comforting. A small amount poured over oatmeal or homemade bread can turn a basic breakfast into something the whole family looks forward to. Emergency food storage isn't only about surviving. It's also about maintaining normal routines whenever possible. Pure maple syrup earns the number 2 spot because it's versatile, easy to store, and provides a long-lasting source of natural sweetness that can brighten even the simplest emergency meals. Number 1. Freeze-dried complete meals. We've finally reached number 1. And this is the emergency food that long-term preparedness experts consistently place at the top of their storage lists. Freeze-dried complete meals. Storing individual ingredients like rice, beans, wheat, and powdered milk is a smart strategy. But complete meals offer something those ingredients can't. Convenience. Instead of measuring, mixing, and preparing several foods, everything is already combined in one package. Just add water. Wait a few minutes. And the meal is ready. That's one reason freeze-dried meals have become so popular among emergency planners, campers, and families building long-term food reserves. When properly packaged in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers and stored in a cool, dry place, many commercially prepared freeze-dried meals are designed to remain shelf-stable for more than 25 years. That's an incredible amount of time for foods that include meat, vegetables, grains, and seasonings. Another advantage is variety. You can find pasta dishes, chicken and rice, beef stew, vegetable soup, breakfast skillets, macaroni and cheese, and many other complete meals. That variety helps prevent food fatigue during long emergencies. Eating the same foods every day quickly becomes exhausting. Having different meals available keeps morale higher and makes it easier for the whole family to eat well. Freeze-dried meals are also lightweight. Since nearly all the moisture has been removed, they take up less space than many canned foods while providing a large number of servings. They're easy to organize, simple to rotate, and ideal for both home storage and emergency evacuation kits. Of course, they do require one essential ingredient: clean water. That's why every long-term food storage plan should also include a dependable water supply and a way to purify additional water if necessary. Food and water always go hand in hand. Although freeze-dried meals usually cost more upfront than basic pantry staples, many families view them as an investment. They're buying peace of mind, knowing they have complete meals ready for decades if an unexpected emergency ever occurs. Freeze-dried complete meals earn the number 1 spot because they combine exceptional shelf life, balanced nutrition, convenience, and outstanding reliability, making them one of the best long-term emergency foods available.